my name is Ashley Helm, and I am here with the KC Fringe. We have several amazing artists here today who are partaking in our virtual festival, and we are approaching the final days of KC Fringe. So I really encourage you to go online, buy some tickets, maybe a weekend pass or day pass, and really encourage your friends to buy tickets as well. So today we have with us Tim Harvey, Chris Avery, Gordon Lamb, and Jessica Whitfield with the IFCKC. The International Film Kansas City, is that correct?
Independent Filmmakers Coalition of Kansas City.
Okay, my bad, I apologize.
Technically we're international too, but that's not the
I know, after I said international, I was like, wait. But so you can see their piece by IFKC Presents Short Films, and then we also have Lindsey from Be to Dance with Win. So if we want to go ahead and introduce her, if you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourselves, we can start with Lindsey.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I'm Lindsey Dinneen. I'm the artistic director of Be to Dance Company, and we're thrilled to be at Fringe every year. We actually got launched as a company at Fringe in 2015, and that's how we just began. And we, like I said, we love Fringe, and this year we're really excited to present something pretty unique. We partnered with Alden Miller, also with IFC, to present the totally brand new show. We're calling it, like I said, When. It's based off of Rudyard Kipling's poem If. And essentially it explores 4 storylines about the value of persistence and perseverance and what you can accomplish when you can embody those characteristics. And so it's really interesting for us. It was so much fun to work with Alden and learn how to do a film. I mean, we've obviously done lots and lots of stage performances before, but filmmaking is completely different. So we're really excited that that was our first experience with that. And it was an amazing experience, and it's a great show.
That's great, Lindsey. And yeah, like she said, Be to Dance has been with us for a long time, and they are a multiple-time winner of Best of Venue with the Fringe. So that is really exciting. And thanks for being here with us again. And then Tim, if you would like to introduce yourself and your team.
Hi, I'm Timothy Harvey, and I have been on the board of the IFCKC. I have been the president of the IFCKC. I have been vice president, treasurer. No, I haven't been treasurer. It's about the only role I haven't filled. And I am not currently on the board. I am a member at large, I suppose. But the IFC has had a film program at Fringe for a decade or so now. We were the first film program to be part of the Kansas City Fringe Festival. You would actually go down to the Fringe office, and behind the desk, you could go to another room and find like 10 chairs and a screen. And there was our first program, and we'd added to it ever since. And while prior to everything being virtual, the program was, of course, in various theaters, often at Crown Center, and certainly not the only film program, but we did start it off and have had a presence at Fringe in one form or another, for at least a decade. And excuse me, this year, like previous years, we had a collection of short films from filmmakers who are very experienced, some who are very new, some who, actually there's a couple of films in here I think that are actually first films. And there are a wide range of stories, different moods and feeling, and just different ways of telling stories, which is always really exciting to bring this sort of thing. Kansas City has a very rich arts community. Everybody knows that. Fringe is a fantastic example of that. But Kansas City also has a really rich and cooperative film community, which is something you don't see in a lot of other big cities, which is really gratifying. And if you're a filmmaker just starting out, or one who's been doing it for a long time, the fact that you have this rich community who can come together and work together. There's a whole lot of, you come work on my film, I'll come work on yours. And a lot of of teaching and learning from each other that, again, is not completely unique to Kansas City. You can find it other places as well, but very rarely do you find the kind of community we have here for filmmakers being able to tell stories together. And the Fringe programs is always just a great opportunity to show off some of that amazing talent we've got here.
That's really wonderful. And I agree, Kansas City does have a wonderful cooperative community, but I didn't know that about the film community. So that's really great to hear. And I didn't realize you guys have been partnering with us for so long. But I know you are a long-time Fringe friend. So I'm glad you guys have been with us for both of our virtual festivals. Chris, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yes, my name's Chris Avery. My freelance name is Rainbow Sound. I've been in business for several decades now, mostly in post-production sound. I started as a film composer and then moved into sound production. Moved away for a while to St. Louis, and now I'm back to Kansas City. So I know a lot of at least the old timers in Kansas City in the film community. My piece was called Stories Without Words, and it came from an interview that I happened to grab from just out of luck from a Swiss singer, a rather unusual singer, who was performing in Armenia. Long story of how I was there, but I spent the summer in 2018 there. And as I came back and made a longer version for, actually it's used at the conservatory, I think, to help students think about how to craft their career, because this guy's had a really unusual career. I then made a shorter version of it, and part of it was to showcase the very unusual collaborations that I was fascinated by. So that's in a nutshell.
That's great. And Chris's piece is actually the first one in the collection of shorts. Mm-hmm. And it's a very interesting and unique documentary with a very interesting and unique focus. Jessica and Gordon, I know you two are artistic partners, so if you'd like to introduce your team.
Jessica, you want to go first?
Yeah, hi, I'm Jessica Whitfield, and I wrote and acted in High Priestess Punch, which was directed by Gordon. And I also had an acting role in Because of Love, which was directed by Mary Wilkins.
I am Gordon Lamb. I am the director and editor for High Priestess Punch. I've been in the I'm a professional photographer, and I've been in the video production, like professional video production business for well over 20 years. Filmmaking is just one of those things. I spend most of my days doing, videos for other people, for other clients. And so doing stuff like, the IFCKC is a real great way to break out of that shell and do something a little creative on my own. So that's kind of what brings me here. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
That's great. And they also have a fantastic piece in it. Really fun, just like a fun, interesting piece. And that's wonderful to hear. So Tim, I'm kind of interested in knowing more. What's the process of picking the shows for the short film collection look like?
Complicated and painful. Sorry. Oh goodness, I don't know where that came from. It's not the easiest process in the world. You usually end up with a lot of really great programs that, if it was a live festival, like we've had, obviously, generally we've had like 5 screenings or 5 performances of a show. And I could make a different program every night if I wanted to, because I had, 5 different nights I could do it. So, which was kind of a selling point. Say, hey guys, come see our show on Tuesday, and then come back on Wednesday for a brand new program. You can't really do that with the way we're doing things virtually right now. So it makes it a challenge, because you end up with more content than you have room for, which is a shame, because there's some really great stuff that we didn't have room for this year. Some of it was alternate stuff from more than, a filmmaker might give me more than one film, and picking between those. But there's always still something that ends up essentially on the cutting room floor. which is a shame. We have so much extra content. We're actually looking at potentially doing an IFC screening of like an hour's worth of films that we just didn't have room for, because there's some really good stuff there, and we'd like to make sure people get a chance to see that. But really, it's going through, and we don't ever actually start off going, this is the theme I want. But what's interesting is that usually over the course of putting together a program, you start to develop a bit of a theme. It's not a consistent kind of thing. There's variances. If you're looking at our program this year, you might sit there and say, what was that theme exactly? But to some degree, there's a certain amount of relationships and just connections between people that comes through this that I think was really interesting. And not everything fits that extremely cleanly, but it's one of the things you should start to find when you're building a program. And to some degree, you look at something that represents not only the folks who are really, really good at this, they've been doing it for a while, they've got the professional skills, maybe that's their day job, is actually doing this professionally. But you also look for the folks who are showing some sort of talent, even if they're very new at this, and give them a chance to actually show their stuff up. We all start somewhere. And I made a feature film that no one's ever going to see because it's terrible. And it was the first thing I did. And we tell a lot of independent filmmakers, don't start with a feature. It's a bad idea. You're going to drive yourself insane, and it's not going to be very good. And it wasn't. But I learned a lot from it. And so the opportunity to show folks who are starting off and being, making really strong work at the beginning is always a fantastic opportunity. So it's a whole lot of watching the films, calling in other people to sit there and go, okay, help me make these decisions. And hoping that when you're all said and done, you've got a really strong program. And I think we do have a strong program this year. We've never really had a problem putting together a strong program. There's a lot of, even with a year like last year, where there just weren't that many films being made. We still had enough content to put together something that I think that shows well the strength of the community in terms of the stories we can tell.
That's great. And yeah, I saw the collection last year, and both years, just again, wonderful collections. And I love the variety, how you can have some funny stuff, dramatic stuff, just all sorts of content and styles. And it's really great to see. And I love, the thing I always have loved about the Fringe is that it does give newer people the opportunity to put their stuff out there. And I'm glad to hear that's the same for your project as well. And so thank you. And then Lindsey, I'm also kind of interested in the process of create your piece. I know yours was a film this year. It was more cinematic, which, as you mentioned, was new for you. What was kind of that process like, and how does dancing for the camera differ from dancing on the stage, and how does choreographing that also differ?
Yeah, those are great questions. Yeah, so it was a completely different approach for us, because we considered the idea that, sure, we could do something that was, Alden or someone else could come and just film us doing a stage performance. But we figured this is a pretty unique opportunity that we have to think through, what would it be like to create a dance for film production, like intentionally that. And so that's when my husband had recently read the poem If, which again is such a great piece of work if you ever get a chance to read it. But then, so he had read that and he was really inspired by it. And we started developing these storylines based off of that and choosing music and all the fun things, and started realizing that really it should be, specific to film, and it should be choreographed in that way. And so that it wasn't just like a stage production, but it was intentionally dance for film. And so that's why we're fondly referring to it as a dancical, because it is like a musical is acting and singing. Our production is dancing and acting. So you have both. It's a dramatic, it's like taking what the poem is and creating a version that is, like I said, acting and dancing. So it is a really, really different experience. Alden is incredibly kind and patient and is a really nice guy and helped me kind of figure out, how do I direct something that I've never done before? I mean, I've had lots of experience directing stage productions, but zero experience directing something for film. And so, you know, it was a really cool process for me to be able to learn from him, and for him to say, well, you're the director, you make this choice. And I'd be like, okay, but you've done this more. Can you bring your perspective into this too? Because you're the professional here. And so that was a really cool opportunity for me to learn a lot. And to learn the fact that, yeah, it is different choreographing for stage versus for a film. And it's important to think about, you know, how do dancers come on and off screen, and the continuity factors, and just things that I wouldn't have considered before. Like, so in a stage production, for instance, to identify a character consistently throughout the performance, in general, you pretty much want them to keep to either the same costume or a very similar costume, because that kind of helps the audience know and recognize them. But in film, you get to see our faces really up close, and you don't need that. And so it doesn't make sense to wear the same costume day after day after day if you're trying to show a progression of time. So things like that I'm sure all of the filmmakers are like, yes, obviously. But, you know, for us, not having had that experience, it was like, oh yeah, well, this is kind of fun because this is a totally different thing. So yeah, huge learning curve. So grateful to work with somebody who was so kind and thoughtful throughout the process. And yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell.
That's great. I think it's cool how, you know, the pandemic has provided like new opportunities and just new perspectives to create different works of art that maybe we wouldn't have tried before, or gets us to try different mediums. And I really liked your piece because it had that, you know, classic Vita dance feel, but it was also new and different. So it was a really great piece. So yeah, and then kind of going more into, you know, talking about the pandemic. This is kind of a question for the whole IFKC team, so whoever wants to go can just answer or share your thoughts. But how, in your opinion, does watching a film differ when you're watching it with an audience on the big screen versus at home alone or on your phone, or whether it's on a laptop? Do you feel like that impacts the audience experience, and how so, if you do?
Yeah, I would say, you're talking about just general going to a movie, like I'm gonna go to a movie, right? Yeah, I think there's a difference. You know, I think, and especially if it's a really good movie, or a movie that you're really invested in, a good audience experience is a much more emotional experience. You know, I'm not a big crier, but there are movies that, you know, they'll pull it out of me. You know, there'll be those moments that you know, that'll you know, push me emotionally. Whereas if I watch that same movie at home, I don't have that same experience. And then I notice that, you know, even if I go back and, you know, I'm going to watch this part of the movie on YouTube that is like audience reaction to that, I have those emotions again. So I think there's a more of an emotional experience when you you know, have an audience, when you're there in person with a group of people.
I think a lot of it's that sense of community, you know, that you get from going to a film with your friends or your family, or just a room full of strangers. If you ever watched a horror film by yourself versus watching a horror film with an audience, you may not be, it might be scarier to watch it at home alone in the dark, but the reactions you're going to get to the moments of terror and comedy, because of course that factors into a lot of horror as well, are really amplified when you've got a crowd, and that feedback you get from the people around you just doesn't exist when you're not at home, unfortunately.
Yes, I would say that it can work both ways. Noise from your neighbors can be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on the type of film. So I think for comedies, and probably for horror too, because that, scare factor, as you say, is amplified. But it can be a real downer if it's a quiet film and you're next to somebody with noisy popcorn or whatever. So I think the other factor that I have come to notice even more is I really prefer to have a discussion sometime after the film, if not directly after. So one of the nice things about film salons, of which I do a couple of them regularly every month, is that there is a discussion pretty, within days after when I've seen the film. And that helps process it a lot and bring out things that I might not have noticed otherwise.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. It is a different experience going to see a movie in the theater. And I think also if it is something that you were a part of, it's really interesting to see the audience's reaction and, oh my gosh, did they think this line was funny? Are they scared at this moment? And I think that's true of stage theater too. If you're going to see something that you've written, seeing the audience's reaction, and having this past year doing all of these virtual shows, you don't get that. You're watching it on Zoom and you're like, wait a minute, what do people think? I have no idea. So I think, yeah, being in person is way different.
Yeah. What I think is interesting about going to something that you've produced at a group setting, and this can even go like way back to when, when I was very first in video production, we'd have those rare moments where like, hey, we're gonna do the Christmas video that we're gonna show at the Christmas party at our company, and that was our time to kind of cut loose. Because we spent, I spent so much time in the editing bay watching it. I've already watched it. I spend more time watching the audience and watching their reaction. And seeing how they get the jokes at the right time. And so I think that was something that I noticed very early on when I would have people watch my work, that I'm not even watching the movie. I've seen it. I want to see how they react to it. And that, tells me like, okay, yeah, I did it right, because they're laughing at all the right spots. So.
Which is an incredibly nerve-wracking experience when you're watching watching the audience watch your film and hoping they get the thing that you did that you really love, and they're like, oh, they didn't.
Yeah.
And I think every audience has its own dynamics too. If you've got a loud laughter person, as opposed to they can turn the tide a lot for better or worse.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's interesting, I think, producing some of this stuff. Last year, I shot and edited the Voliere Thieves of Flight program. This year I edited Tim Mooney's Moliere Than Thou show. And both of which are, things for live audiences, neither of which was for a live audience. And now Tim has gotten really practiced at performing directly to a camera. He's been doing this virtually for the last year. This is his life. And so he's gotten really skilled at it. But when I was filming the show, Voliere show, it was like, okay, the audience is all going to be seeing it from here, but I can get in close. I can get those facial expressions. I can get that motion that she does with her foot when she does this, or we had someone who's playing the cello. I can actually get in there and get their, the bow work. And it makes, thinking of it as a filmmaker versus thinking of it as an audience member, I think really helped bring some of that stuff that you would normally not necessarily get that detail in the live performance to the screen in a way that would make it engaging. But you do lose that energy of the live performance. Because when you see some of these folks doing, that amazing aerial work that they were doing, the audience would be going, and you don't have that. I mean, I did it when I was, I was there, but the folks watching it later weren't, So I mean, it's you lose that. But the fact
does that mean that there's a new opening for an editor aha track? Record yourself and stick it underneath.
You know what? That's what we really need to do, is get a whole bunch of great vocalists to come in here and just give us some great audience reactions. Because if you ever have, sound editing, you sit there and you pull sound clips from libraries, and sometimes those audience reaction, sound of a crowd, and you're like, I have never heard a crowd sound like that in my entire life.
Yeah, that's kind of been a common theme both this year and last, is that lack of the audience energy, especially for dancers, has been a big one. It's impacted them. We had a hip hop artist on here, and she talked about how the audience really amps up the dancers, and it gets them amped up, and not having that energy. And then it's also been difficult for our storytellers to adapt, because they're so used to looking at an audience member and sharing that connection and telling their story. So finding different ways to bring back that energy or still keep the connectivity just as an audience member watching a movie and when you discuss it has been an adventure, that its own adventure to explore during this pandemic as well.
One thing I've noticed, that we connected a lot of filmmakers and artists last year, and some of that happened again this year. And some of the stage artists learned to shoot and edit themselves in the last year, which has been really fantastic, because they looked at what they do and said, okay, I need to make sure that my audience can still get what we're doing. And so they went out and learned how to film a production with, maybe it was an iPhone. You don't necessarily need, as much as I love having my professional, my HD cameras and my DSLRs, the fact that there are people out there who can do that stuff with the cell phone camera, but they learned how to edit and find ways to continue to do their live performances, in some way out in the world. So looking at some of the programs we have this year, last year was that kind of weird rocky thing where we're all like, we have to adapt suddenly. And this year there was a lot more overall through Fringe of people going, okay, I learned from last year, and this year I'm going to do this instead, and it's going to look cool. And a lot of it does. And that's the really exciting thing, is that, the arts adapt.
Absolutely. And I mean, I don't think we said we would have a digital festival until like May last year. And we had the festival in June. So people either were submitting stuff that they happened to film, or they scrambled to get some stuff, or some were able to take the time and create a new project. But I think this year we definitely see, even with some of our returning artists, there definitely is an upgrade in terms of just the content level. It's the production quality itself, definitely an upgrade in production quality. And it's really interesting to see. And that's moving forward, where we will be keeping a digital aspect to our festival, even once we are back to live and in-person performances. Sorry, I just need to check my notes. So this is kind of for everyone, just kind of continue our discussion. How has the pandemic and COVID affected your creative process, especially I think like filmmaking, and how has it differed, and like going on with how have you adapted? And anyone's welcome to go.
I'll start. Yeah, on a professional level, on my day-to-day job, it's been interesting because like where I work, we never shut down. So we were all fortunate to actually continue working. We've just all been working from home. But for me, because I'm the collector of stories, for the university, we still had to find a way to do that, and so there in the beginning there was, okay, we're going to start conducting interviews on Zoom, which is it's not my favorite medium to have to work with. Because it's hard to do, it's hard to do edits, but you learn things along the way. And then we were doing socially distanced interviews, to where it's like, well, we're just going to set the cameras way back and and make sure that we have, good distance between us, and maybe we'll do them outside, which then presents like, oh, 435's in the background of where we're at, and now I have all this traffic that I have to drop out. Or now I'm in this giant room that's, yeah, we're socially distanced, but I have a lot of echo in here. And so it has presented its challenges on that end, on just trying to do things safe. I think, and just, making sure that everybody's comfortable, everybody's safe, everyone feels like, they're in a safe environment. And I think that's probably been the biggest challenge with the whole COVID. And then, but yet still, telling the story that we have to tell. So, yeah.
I came in off a 4-year period where I was not making much in the way of films because I had an interesting job delivering body parts. I was a pathology courier for 4 years, which was always, lots of fun stories there. But the hours were very long. It was very tiring. My ability to go out and play really dropped off. And so doing Fringe every year was actually one of my few outlets of being creative, whether, even just building a program. And then I was filming a burlesque troupe occasionally, but I had very little that I was actually doing in terms of making films during that period of time. And I got the job I have now, and my boss is really supportive of me going off and making films. She thinks it's great. She wants me to do more of it. And then COVID hit. And the 4 scripts I had prepared, I'm like, yes, I'm going to get back. No, everything grinds to a halt. And this was an experience for a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people, and it's the production shut down. I have a lot of friends who, their livelihood in the arts suddenly evaporated because the show just wasn't happening, and the schedule for the next year was gone. And I work from home, and I have this great job, so I wasn't impacted on a professional level, aside from the fact that I work for a grant writing company, and we do a lot of training, and I do the editing. So I Gordon, trust me, I do a lot of Zoom. Once a week, we do a Zoom training, and I edit the heck out of those things. And so, yeah, the fun of getting around the fact that, boy, you hope when they go, you can cut around that.
Right.
It's lots of fun. But having the opportunity to continue doing that for work kept a little bit of the creative stuff going. And now that things are starting to hopefully open up a little more, I'm really excited about the chance of getting out and making some of my own stuff, because I've had I was able to go out and work on a few things for other people, but my own productions, the stuff that the stories I wanted to tell, I didn't really have a chance to do that for the last several years. So COVID just came along at precisely the wrong time. There's no good time for a pandemic, by the way. Personally, it was a really bad time.
In an odd way, the pandemic, in a small way, was helpful to me, because I had started a feature documentary where the cut wasn't done. Lisa Marie Evans, who used to live here, had moved to Arkansas, and I was working on her documentary called In Her Words. And so the cut wasn't done, but we decided I should start working early on it. It was fall of 2019, I think. And so she had come up a couple of times, and we met in person, but we were going to work long distance. So we had to set up some pretty robust sharing of gigantic files. When the pandemic came, I was already hunkered down with that. I kept thinking there was a deadline, and it kept moving. So in some ways it cut down on the distraction for me, which in a strange way was helpful.
Yeah, I've had to learn to do new things during the pandemic because, a lot of things I was going to be a part of got shut down, both for film and stage. So And I just really, when the pandemic first started, I was like, oh gosh, I need to be creative. So I had to kind of teach myself, well, I can do a monologue, I can do that by myself. So I was just kind of doing that in my apartment. So I had to learn how to just do some simple edits and lighting and that kind of thing. So I learned a little bit during the pandemic, having to find ways to be creative and do everything myself. So yeah, you do learn some new skills.
Yeah, I think this time has just been about adapting, especially as artists and learning new mediums. We do have a comment from one of our viewers, and Emery was just sharing that they were in the middle of post-production when COVID hit, and they were fortunate to be working from home. And you know, where along in the process you are would definitely make a huge difference. Whether you're pre-production, maybe middle of production, and then post-production, which hopefully would be the nice sweet spot to be. So to Tim, if a young filmmaker or maybe experienced filmmaker was interested in getting involved with IFKC, how could they do so, and what kind of opportunities do you have for filmmakers in the area?
Well, I would say definitely get involved with the IFCKC community. There, if you go on Facebook, you can find IFCKC community, and it is we've got actually a couple of different. We got a Facebook page and a Facebook group. But if you just type in IFC community, IFCKC community, you'll find us. And it's a great place to network and connect with folks. It's a very active page. People are posting information about the show they're working on, or their new project, or, you know, hey, I need someone to come help me with an edit. I need someone who knows how to use lights. I need someone to do sound. And again, the one of the most important things you can do as an independent filmmaker is network and connect with the folks around you. Because like I mentioned earlier, coming out and you working on my film means I come out and work on your film later. You acting in my film, you editing my film, we build these connections. And sometimes that means you end up with a great stable of people that you work with again and again and again. And sometimes it means you have a bunch of people that you work with once and never work with again, and that's great too. And we run competitions several times a year. The One Night Stand competition was a couple of weeks ago now. It's one of our biggest competitions of the year. And that was a 10-hour film competition. And a lot of people who actually worked together on that had never worked together before. And some of them were very experienced filmmakers, and some of them had never worked on any film before. And bringing those folks together and getting them a chance to play. But just come connect. We have the ifckc.org is the website. You can find information there. And certainly watch those spaces for information about our next competitions. We are trying to do some live events where you can get out and actually meet people and connect with people. But at least once a month, there's usually a video meeting where you can come on and talk about what you're working on, ask questions. And again, just network, talk to folks, ask questions. When I moved to Kansas City in 2005, I sat in the back of the Westport Coffee House Theater, which is where the IFC used to meet. We used to meet once a week. This was the internet was new in those days. No, social media was still new, and so that the way we use it now to communicate just wasn't really as strong. So we were meeting every week, and I sat in the back of that theater for 6 months before I talked to anybody. Just soaking up and that was an incredibly dumb thing to do. Because once I started talking to folks, we started making movies together. And some of them were good and some of them weren't. And some of them were, I'm still proud to show off, and some of them I'd like to bury in the back. And it was all good wonderful connections and experience, and that's how you grow as a filmmaker and as a storyteller, no matter what side of the camera you're on. That's how you grow, is by making more. Whether you're on stage, you do more, and just get involved. We're friendly. We only bite a little bit. And there are a lot of really, really kind and generous people in the Kansas City film community who want to help you tell your story. And take advantage of that. That's what we're here for.
That's great, Tim. And that's really great advice to, I think, any artist. I'm personally part of that Facebook page, so definitely check them out and check out their website. And then, Lindsey, what's going on with Vita Dance? Are there any upcoming projects, or what have you guys been working on?
Yeah, we are super excited to be getting back to live performances. We have booked the Union Station City Stage for our very own Nutcracker production. It's going to be the first weekend of December. We have partnered with Kansas City Aerial Arts, and this will be the second time we have done this show. It's called Cracked, a reimagined Kansas City Nutcracker, and it's completely Kansas City themed, is kind of our nod to our beloved city, and our way of saying sort of thanks for being so inclusive of the arts and artists. And so, like, you see little, odes to Wizard of Oz, and Act 2 is set on the Kansas City Plaza rather than, in the Land of Sweets and things like that. So everything is completely Kansas City themed. It's so much fun. And then you have like so many different styles of dance, from ballet, modern jazz, tap, and then you have the aerialists who are just outstanding. So it's a really cool production. First weekend in December. Details coming soon. So we're at vitadancecompany.com, and of course on social media at Vita Dance Company, essentially. But yeah, we're incredibly excited and thrilled, and Variants, please just go away so we can we can perform live again. But to echo what Tim was talking about, I just want to also say that, from the perspective of an artist who is very much not a filmmaker, these guys are amazing. IFC has been just a tremendous group that I have gotten to be a part of for a while, and thanks to Fringe is how we all connected. But if you are an artist and want to collaborate with filmmakers, I mean, it's just the most, like Tim said, welcoming group. They may bite a little, but it's only to get you better. So it's a good thing. But yeah, I would just highly encourage. I think that the way that artists can continue to adapt to times that are very unpredictable is by collaborations and coming up with just newer ways to explore art, and it doesn't have to be the same way it always was. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I definitely think this, last year and a half has been a big lesson in that, and forced people to adapt, whether we wanted to or not. But I think it has been for the better for art. I think Casey Fringe does connect so many artists and just so many people. So again, you can go to caseyfringe.org and you can buy tickets to both of these productions and see all of these wonderful people's work. And I can't believe this festival is already coming to a close so quickly. So I really encourage you to do that. We have a question. Where can we see the film projects of tonight's guests? Yeah, so just go to caseyfringe.org and you can purchase a ticket to IFCKC Presents Short Films at the Fringe, I believe is the full title. And you can purchase a ticket to that, or you can buy a day pass or 2-day pass, and you can see all of the shows. And then for Vita Dance shows, you can also find a ticket. You can also find the location to buy a ticket to that show online at caseyfringe.org, and that piece is titled Win. So definitely check them out. And then once you purchase tickets, you'll get a password and you'll be able to go on and watch the show. You can watch it at 3 a.m. You can watch it at 2 p.m. Totally up to you. So I really encourage you to check out their work. Thank you all for being here today. I'm glad we all got to have all of you together on here, since you guys kind of helped each other out in a way. So thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful Are these in-person performances? No, currently Kansas City Fringe is all virtual. But Vita Dance does have an upcoming in-person show should everything everything goes to plan. And so you can check out Vita Dance on social media for more updates on that. And hopefully KC Fringe will be back to in-person later this next coming year. Yeah, fingers crossed. Well, thank you all. Have a wonderful night and happy fringing.